Because as I was growing up, I internalized a lot of feelings.
Yes, yeah.
About, I'm not good enough, I wish I was white, I wish I was an African. You know, I just felt different in every single way. And I did need at that point that support to say, actually, you are amazing as you are.
Books are so important to support children and help children with their identity and their feelings.
So I didn't really see much diversity at all. So it was really important for me to be able to create something I could relate to, you know, to my younger self, you know, and for children that kind of want to see themselves in books like I did. If more people try jollof rice, there won't be any left.
The world would be a better place.
100%,
Yes.
100%.
In this episode of My Words, My Book, we have Onyinye Iwu. She is a Black British author, illustrator and secondary school teacher based in London. She's worked with top publishers and illustrated books by acclaimed authors like Benjamin Zephaniah and me. Her author-illustrator debut, The Best Jollof Rice Ever, celebrates friendship, fun and the joy of cooking. Onyinye, why did you become an author?
I've always loved telling stories. I was an only child for about 10 years. And within that time, I had a lot of cousins and family friends, and they were all younger than me. So I was always the oldest one, and I always had to sort of gather them around and do things with them. So I always loved telling stories. And with that, I always did the drawings to go with it. So for me, when I was growing up, reading, writing, drawing, they all kind of went together. And I think, you know, especially as someone, you know, I grew up in Italy from a Nigerian household. And as someone that loved reading, but didn't really see that many books, because if you think about it, I was reading in Italian. So a lot of the books that even if there might have been some books that were maybe diverse, I didn't see them because they weren't translated in Italian. So I didn't really see much diversity at all. So it was really important for me to be able to create something I could relate to, you know, to my younger self, you know, and for children that kind of want to see themselves in books like I did.
But then you started first as an illustrator, didn't you? And I think that's important to share your journey from starting off as an illustrator. How did you get to become an illustrator?
So I would say that where it comes to overall as a creative, I've actually always done both.
Okay.
Yes, back in the days, I used to write stuff and illustrate stuff for myself. But I realized that my entry point was actually as a designer. So I studied architecture. But whilst I was studying architecture, I kind of knew that I wanted to do illustration. But coming from a Nigerian background, it was kind of frowned upon. It was kind of like, okay, you're gonna go and be an artist. What are you gonna do? So I powered through my architecture degree. But what I decided to do was to freelance. So I started working with companies, organizations, and indie publishers after my first degree. So that's kind of where I got my first, my first kind of try at illustration in publishing. So I worked with a publisher called Cassava Republic, and I started working on some book designs for them. And I did some illustration there. And then I kind of did my own things online. And I think that's kind of where Walker saw my work on my social media. And they contacted me in 2019 and asked me if I wanted to be involved in illustrating the Too Small Taller series, which I was like, goodness, that is absolutely amazing. And so that's where I started. And obviously I got to work with you on My Skin, Your Skin, which was absolutely incredible.
Can we just stop there for a minute? American accent. Because you illustrated My Skin, Your Skin. So I wrote the words and you illustrated that book, which is coming up to, I think, 4 years now since it's been published. And it's still going from strength to strength. I think so many people say to me, you know, I've got My Skin, Your Skin, from schools to parents to organisations. And I just want to thank you for doing the illustrations for that book, because it's the illustrations that bring the words of this most powerful book alive, you know? So thank you for that.
And thank you for the words. I think as soon as I heard about the book and I was approached, I was like, this is for me. It's so important, you know, as a young person to be confident about, you know, whatever skin color you are. Especially, like I said, for me, it was such a pivotal thing growing up and really understanding that I was not the same color as other people in my classroom. And then the funny thing was moving to this country as a teenager and then still being, well, I didn't really know about colorism until I came to this country, right? Because at first I was just the black girl. When I came to this country, I was the light skinned black girl. Oh, are you mixed race? Oh, is this? And I was like, oh, okay, this is completely new ground. And so it's important to have these conversations because when you don't, children are left alone to kind of, you know, navigate such a difficult part of it's really difficult because you're kind of like, we don't necessarily think of our skin color, but it is actually quite a strong thing on the outside that people do judge us on.
And even today, I mean, I am quite old, and even when I was growing up, and now you still hear the stories around, yes, racism, colorism, etc. And so many adults have said to me, yes, it is a children's non-fiction book, but it has been the starting point for them in their understanding around race and racism, and equally to that empowerment as well. And I thought what was fantastic is the book has been translated into many languages,
I
especially
know.
Italian.
Which
And
my
when I
heart.
first saw the email it came through, I was like, oh my goodness me, Onyinye is going to be so pleased, you
No,
know?
I was, yeah, it was really emotional. It was really emotional. You know, sometimes you feel like you can't say the R word, racism. You're not allowed the race card. And to be able to talk to children about it, especially to children that are literally going through exactly the same thing as I was. Because a lot of, I mean, I think sometimes when we live in London, there's a little bit of a bubble because you're like, oh yeah, it's such a diverse city, multicultural, wow. But actually, as soon as you step out of London or even of the UK and you start seeing the reality of maybe Afro Europeans or people of African descent living in Europe, it's very different. The numbers are much smaller. So you can imagine, you know, sometimes the ignorance, sometimes the racism. And it's very difficult to navigate that as a young person and not to internalize those feelings because as I was growing up, I internalized a lot of feelings
Yes, yeah.
about I'm not good enough. I wish I was white. I wish I was an African. I wish I didn't have to, you know, be the only one that, you know, I just felt different in every single way. And I did need at that point that support to say, actually, you are amazing as you are. Your culture is amazing. Your name is amazing. Your identity, you know, don't shy away from it. But you know, I'm glad that we're here in this time in the world that we can do that. And I'm glad that Italy is working towards that. I'm not saying it's perfect because,
Well, the
you
UK is
know,
not perfect.
no,
You
nowhere
know,
is.
everything is work in progress, isn't it? And I think for children to be able to vocalize how they're feeling and to call it out when they see it, and having My Skin, Your Skin there as a book, I think it's got, because I am still super proud of the book. You know, even when I see it and people say, oh, I saw your book. My cousin said, oh, I saw your book in a school, and it's just amazing. So thank you very much for that book, because I believe it's 4 years in, and I believe it will be a timeless book that you will have adults saying, oh, that was a book that I read as a child, you know.
Definitely. I agree with you. I think it's a seminal. So it's going to be like that kind of reference to opening up conversations to children about race and yeah.
Yeah, no, amazing. So thank you. So as a child, I suppose, growing up in Italy, did you have a favorite book?
So I read loads, but one book that really stands out, and I still have the copy in Italian because it actually is not translated in English, is Il Corvo Alfonso, which is, I think he's a crow. So Alphonse the Crow. It was written by Erwin Moser, but he is an Austrian author, old school. But it's literally not translated in English. Like I tried, I said, "Is there an English translation?" I couldn't find it. And I love it because it's this story about this crow, but he's different from the other crows. Like he's a bit like, I don't know, he's just like, he's maybe a bit slow, he's a bit goofy, just like he doesn't fly properly. And the crows are just like, oh, you're just so rubbish. Like, why are you not? Come on, like just get with the program. And he just couldn't. And he ends up going to this garden of this, is he like a wizard? And he eats these plums. And he actually turns into the wizard. And the wizard turns into him. And the wizard actually wasn't happy because the wizard was looking at the birds and he was like, I wish I was a bird. I wish I could fly away and all that sort of stuff. So they swap buddies. But then they start realizing actually the grass is not always greener. And Alphonse the Crow, he start realizing that maybe he kind of, he was okay being himself. And I think for me, I really loved it because at that point it was kind of escapism for me because I did really, I remember my mom told me that when I was young, I used to ask her if I could change my name to Chiara, which is an Italian name, and it actually means like light. It means clear. And so like it's so weird because now I'm thinking about like, why would I say that? But this is like I really felt like I could I'd rather be, I would dream that I'd wake up and then I wasn't black. And actually, like, I would wake up and I was in a dream, like, like the Truman Show. And then actually, and they'll be like, no, you're not really black. Don't worry. It's fine. You're actually Italian and it's all good. So yeah, so that book kind of gave me a bit of like, okay, maybe it's okay to be myself. I don't know if I fully understood it, but I
Yes,
still
at
kind
that
of,
time when you were a
yeah,
child, it was that book that
like an
really,
anchor.
yeah, that resonated with you, that it's okay to be myself. And that's why I think why books are so important to support children and help children with their identity and their feelings.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope maybe I'll have to teach my sons Italian properly so I can read it to them.
No, you must do. So at home, because you've got two children, what languages do you speak at home?
Just English. I'm the only one that speaks. My partner doesn't speak Italian, and he doesn't speak either, and I don't speak either very well. And I'm the only one that speaks Italian, so I just speak English. I try and add some Italian words here and there, but it is difficult because, like, I've been in this country for over 20 years, and my Italian is good, but it's just, yeah, I don't know. I've not been very good, but I have tried to introduce him via books and via like films. So we watch some Italian cartoons, so he knows some words and some songs in Italian and things like that. So I try my best.
Did you know that research informs us that children, because we had Kelechi who was interviewed a few months back, and she was sharing, her story, and likewise with my story, my parents spoke Creole, St. Lucian Creole, and they didn't teach it to us because they wanted us to fit in.
Yeah.
And actually, research informs us that children who speak 2, 3 different languages actually do better academically. But in their early years, with my early years hat on, they do tend to muddle up words, which is fine. That's quite a natural process as they're figuring things out. But within the home environment, if one parent spoke at least one of the languages, they pick it up.
No, I agree.
Something to reflect on, isn't it?
No, you know what? I've been thinking about it for a very long time. And the thing is, I myself, my parents didn't actually. So I understand Igbo. If my parents speak Igbo, I know what they're saying. Yes, I've got it. However, like I can't have conversations in it, and they didn't sort of push it that hard because they just wanted me to speak Italian because they're in Italy. You know, my mum was learning Italian at the time. My dad had been there for a long time. My mum was still learning, so I was actually a tool for her to learn Italian as well. So it was kind of like, you know, it wasn't the priority for me to learn Igbo, but I've noticed also a lot of people from that of Igbo heritage, unfortunately, don't speak Igbo, and actually, like, it's one of the languages that I think the research said by 2050 it might be extinct, just because there's so many Igbo people in the world and in the diaspora and within Nigeria that don't actually speak Igbo. So I know of people that were born and brought up in Nigeria that still live there and don't speak Igbo, and they just speak English. So I understand, you know, the important, and actually I'd be more actually I'd want to actually learn it more so I could pass that down even more than Italian, because it's such, you know, my children have Igbo names, Igbo first names. So
Yeah, it's something to think about, and I think it's so important for how your language is part of your identity, it's part of your culture. Like I know similarly where you were saying about the understanding, I know St. Lucian Creole certain words because obviously you're there, you're listening to it, etc. So if I was to go probably to St. Lucia for about 6 months, probably I would pick it up because in turn of the rhythm and the flow of it. So if there's certain words being spoke, you can grasp it to think, well, I know exactly what you're talking about. And interestingly enough, when I was in probably about 7 years ago, I was in Miami, and the staff were from Haiti, and they speak Creole. It's similar as well. And then they said something, and I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because it was in reference to some other guest, how they left a room. And they said a word, and I said, I know. And
I know what you're saying.
I know exactly what you're saying. And we were laughing. So, and I think it is, you know, it's important, languages. And I think, which brings me on nicely to this beautiful book, The Best Jollof Rice Ever. So please share, what is this beautiful book all about?
So my debut book as an author-illustrator. So, West Africa, we love our food, but one of the main dishes that pretty much most people I know have heard of is jollof rice. We're always going on about it. Me as a Nigerian, I'm always going on about it. Ghanaians always going on about it. Senegalese always going on about it. Even the Gambians. So it's one of those things where it's this dish that has evolved over the years, and everyone is sort of you know, saying we're the ones that have the best one. We're the ones that invented it. So I said, why not take this sort of, because it was kind of like a social media thing. I remember it was big on what we used to call Twitter. They used to have sort of jollof wars on there, and it's like, oh no, because da, 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 da. And I was like, you know, how about we bring the kids into this? And so I wanted to think of a way of, you know, talking about jollof rice, but also celebrating it and celebrating the togetherness. Because I think, you know, it's so interesting how something as simple as rice can kind of, some people can kind of feel very, you know, upset about, oh, how dare you think that my rice is not, you know, yeah. So I just wanted to bring a bit of humor and a bit of collaboration. So it's a warm story, and you know, the most important thing is that at the end, together we make the best jollof rice. And so, you know, the kids, they get to play, they get to try and cook, they get to think about what would it taste like if I add interesting things like worms and nettle.
For goodness me.
Ants. You know, kids, they love some insects and they love playing with. So yeah, but yeah, I'm so happy about this book. You know, inspired, yes, by the Jollof Wars, also by my son. He loves jollof rice, and we spent a few months living in Ghana, and he absolutely loved it. I mean, right now his favorite is okra soup, so I might have to do a follow up. But yes, yeah, I really enjoyed working on this book. And it's just so weird to now say I am the author of the book, not just the illustrator, which is like, wow.
Because I think it's important to share that because it's a real skill, isn't it, to be able to do both. But digressing slightly when you were saying about the Jollof Rice Wars, who makes the best Jollof Rice? It's similarly with, is it plantain or plantain?
Ooh, you know, I'm a plantain. I'm a plantain girl. Yeah. I didn't know people pronounce it plantain. I was like, what's that? What are you planting?
I'll just have to think now with my verbal dyslexia, what do I say? Because I had some plantain. Plantain, I
You say
say.
plantain. That's the Nigerian way of saying it.
Plantain. Yeah, plantain. I had some plantain at the weekend. Yeah,
You say
plantain.
plantain.
Plantain, yeah.
Because
Plantain.
yeah,
That
maybe
doesn't
it's a
sound.
plantain. To me, it doesn't sound right because it's like, what are you planting? And then they said, no, it's not like a mountain plantain. No, I'm like,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the price, we talk about the price of plantain has gone up now. And we used to get 5 for £1. I saw one the other day. I bought one that was 60 pence. Very expensive.
For one.
Yeah. But that was local to me. I'm sure if I went somewhere else, you could probably still get 3 or 2 for £1, something like that.
You know the funny thing about plantain for me? I didn't actually eat plantain until I went to university. I didn't have my It's
Why
weird.
was
I'm a
that?
bit of a picky eater, and especially with Nigerian food, I was very iffy about it. I don't know if subconsciously it was like I didn't want to associate myself with it, but also I just generally I wasn't very good at eating when I was young. Um, but with plantain specifically, I just did not like. I would look at it and be like, "What are you guys eating?" I first started eating it raw, so I was making so I could make plantain, I just couldn't eat it. So I was cooking it for my parents, and I had some raw, and I was like, it's nice raw. It's actually nicer than a banana because it's got a little bit of like that salt. It's salty and sweet. Yeah, so it's quite nice. And then I had it with some stew. I was like, is this what you guys been enjoying? Okay. So yeah, I like it now.
It's good to have conversations around food because I think we've already had we've talked about plantain and rice, how it's so central, I think, to so many different cultures, isn't it? Yes, yeah.
Which is, when you are kind of in your own bubble, you think it's just you, but actually it's so important for both, for all the different cultures.
Absolutely.
And it's the same with like, with the jollof rice, it's like, I've grown up with a specific type, even within Nigeria. We say, oh no, we make better rice. Oh, even in, the Yorubas might say, we make better rice and we use this one and we use basmati. No, we use long grain actually, long grain. So like the Nigerian jollof, I would say Nigerian jollof is long grain, but Ghanaian jollof is basmati. And then Nigerian jollof, from what I've gathered, because after living in Ghana and doing a bit of and even because I had my book launch, and I had both Nigerian jollof and Ghanaian jollof, and they were saying the taste there's something different about it, and I think Nigerians use a lot more peppers and grilled peppers within the sauce. And I don't think Ghanaians use as many. I might be wrong. Someone will be like, "No, you're wrong." But that's what I saw. Because actually, when I went to Ghana, what I saw is red peppers are very expensive in Ghana. I don't know if there's always been like this, but they're super expensive.
Yeah.
So they don't actually use them in the jollof rice, whilst in Nigeria, so I think maybe that might be a bit of the difference. So it's more tomatoey in Ghana, it's more peppery in Nigeria, but eventually
And that's good
it's
to
all
bring it
nice.
out in the book, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
really good to
yeah.
have that. And I think equally too, come from my heritage, St. Lucia and Caribbean, the food is quite similar in terms of we have rice and peas, plantain, and my best friend, she's Brazilian, and they have certain food that is quite similar. So I think it's a really great discussion point to use a book like The Best Jollof Rice as a conversation starter for children to talk about similar food that they have in their homes. I just think it's a fantastic way to use as a resource within schools as well.
Like
Yes, yeah.
my partner's from Guyana, so we went to Guyana a couple of years ago, and I was shocked. So they have like this okra stew, which was to me is exactly like okra soup, like the Nigerian one. so many similarities, and it's so interesting to be able to sort of be like completely separate spaces, and you would think different cultures, different food, but then speaking to his grandma, she was saying that actually like they used to eat fufu and things like that, very very similar. So yeah, it's really exciting, and I hope the book is able to open up these conversations at schools, and also open up the fact that I think again, as when I was younger, I wasn't great at eating, but also there was sometimes, and even up to when I was going to university, where I'd make something. I think at university I was cooking soup, so I would make like okra soup or egusi soup, and then some housemates, ignorant of other people's cultures, oh, I threw it away because it stank, and they don't, it's not a food that they've tried before, or whatever, and they have kind of that, in their mindset that, oh, what is this rubbish? And I think it's about opening up to realizing we eat different types of foods in different countries and from different cultures, and it's okay, and be open to trying, be open to accepting that, yeah, it's just different, it's for us it's absolutely delicious, and I think if more people try jollof rice, oh, there won't be any left.
The world would be a better place.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
So in this book, what would you say would be your favorite page? Do you have a favorite page?
Yes, so my favorite page is when the kids are cooking with their mums. It's kind of vignettes of the different steps to cooking jollof rice. And I really like that page. It's kind of when I think about, cooking activities with my mum. It was a sort of similar thing of like, okay, now we're going to do this and now we're going to do that. And yeah, I think it's quite joyous, and, seeing the excitement in the kids' faces. And like, even when I cook with my son, he gets really, Mommy, can I help you? Can I help you cook? And I'm putting something in the oven, he'll like stand back and just look like, ooh, and then he'll tell his friends, oh, I helped my mummy cook, and it's yeah, it's nice, it's fun.
If you was interviewing yourself, what question would you ask yourself about the best jollof rice ever?
Okay, I mean, the obvious question would be, seriously though, which one is best? But actually, I think I'd ask myself, why is it important to celebrate, our cultural food together?
And your answer is?
My answer is because, like, our culture is like our identity is everything, and food is a massive part of everyone's identity, especially children. I think when you think about it, when we're at school, most of us, we'll have either maybe standard school meals, or we'd have a packed lunch, which most times is going to be quite similar, right? We're not kind of like, most of us are not bringing cultural foods at home, sorry, at school, but actually at home is where the difference is. Maybe at somebody's birthday, at a party, that's when you see someone, celebrating the jollof rice, and you have the suya, and you have, the chicken in this type of way, and all that sort of stuff. Imagine if you go to an Indian party, if you go to a Jamaican party, if you go to a Nigerian party, if you go to a Kenyan party, the sort of foods that you get are going to be so different. And that is like a big part of who we are. And so that's why I think it's so important to celebrate, everybody's culture, to really understand that's a big part of who they are at home, and it's a big part to celebrate.
Absolutely. And even with where you talked about between Nigeria and Ghana, similarly in the Caribbean, with all the different Caribbean islands, they're all totally different in terms of the food. Might be similar, like the rice and peas, but then we cook it differently. And that again is another conversation starter. That the food is different. There's similarities, but they're actually different. And then thinking of that coming from the similarities and differences, what would you want children to take away from reading this book?
One thing that we haven't mentioned is, so both kids have African names. So one is called Kamsi, one is called Kwame, to reflect their heritage. And names are so important. Um, you won't know this. I actually have an English name. Um, it's on my passport. And I don't use it. I stopped using it at 18. Um, a name is so important, in my opinion, to your identity, to who, and I think what happened to me is that I stopped feeling like my name or
Okay.
like my English name. So Onyinye is my name on my passport as well. It's just I had both, but I was only referred to by my English name. And it just I couldn't resonate with it. And Onyinye has always been left on the side. So it was always there, but because when I was growing up, if I added it to things, people started kind of like mispronouncing it, or when kids kind of like they taunt you and they go that sort of thing, because they were already doing that with my surname. So I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not gonna give myself too much of a headache, and so I just omitted it. But actually, as I grew up, I said, no, I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of where it's from. I'm proud of its meaning. It means gift from God, and I love it. And that's why I really wanted them to have, cultural names, Nigerian name, Ghanaian name, to reflect who they are, and to celebrate their cultures and their heritage. So that's really important. I remember when I was when I first announced the book, I got a message from this mother on Instagram. And she said, "Oh, wow, I'm so excited that one of the children is called Kamsi, because my son is called Kamsi." She said, "Oh, my son is called Kamsi too." And then she said, but the issue with my son is he actually hates his name. He actually doesn't like, so he makes people call him Cam. He really doesn't like his name at all. He feels really uncomfortable about it. And I'm like, I hope that this book allows children to feel like, hey, you can have, yeah, be proud of your name, be proud of who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is a great point to finish up on Onyinye, in terms of be proud of who you are and be proud of your name. So thank you very much for an insightful conversation we've had. And this book here, The Best Jollof Rice Ever, please read this amazing book and start important conversations. Please visit your library if you can, and keep on reading and reading and reading. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. This podcast was woven in partnership with our friends at Tapestry, the childhood education platform. They have kindly devised the educational resources for each podcast interview. Tapestry helps you celebrate children's learning, improve communication with families, and streamline your admin with powerful booking, invoicing, and management tools, giving you more time for what matters, the children and you. Visit tapestry.info to find out more. This podcast series was recorded at the Quick Brown Fox Video Production Studios in Wandsworth Town, London, with top-notch equipment and a knowledgeable team who are always happy to help. Recording our podcast has been a breeze.